the threat has already been active, and it just took a while to be able to recognize like all that data that was leaving your company or your agency that was exfilled. That was the strategy.
Welcome to Shielded, the last line of cyber defense by PQ Shield, the podcast where we are moving the conversation around post-quantum cryptography from the why to the how. I'm Joe Lintzen, your host, and I'm here to guide you through the challenges, innovations, and solutions that will help your organization stay secure in the quantum era. Let's future-proof your defenses together. Welcome to Shielded, the last line of cyber defense. I'm Joe Lintzen, your host. In today's episode, we have the privilege of speaking with Yolanda Reid, former associate partner at IBM Consulting with a wealth of experience in cybersecurity, national defense, and quantum technologies. Yolanda's impressive career spans over more than 2 decades, including leadership roles at Raytheon, BBN Technologies, Everwatch, and last but not least, the U.S. Department of Defense. Her work always focuses around guiding organizations to embrace cutting-edge technologies such as AI, quantum cryptography, and zero trust to enhance security and resilience in an increasingly complex digital landscape. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most critical topics in the cybersecurity space. That is why post-quantum cryptography is not the next Y2K. While some might draw parallels between quantum readiness and the Y2K bug, Yolanda will explain why this shift is far more than just a singular event. It's an ongoing, evolving transformation in how organizations approach cryptography, cybersecurity, and organizational resilience. Yolanda, it's fantastic to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. As we were preparing for this podcast, Yolanda, you told me that your daughter is big in cheerleading and maybe qualified for a big event in Disney World.
Yes, we were at ESPN Zone. And so we were there for a good 4 days. She was on 2 teams. So we qualified on one, and then something happened to the other team. So she ended up being on a second team, and we had a great time there. And then she just placed on her new team for the new season. New cheer season already started.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. That's great to hear. And I'm sure that was exciting times for you as a mom as well.
Yes, it is.
Awesome. So in cheerleading, I think a lot has to be said about, preparation, practice, and mental toughness and teamwork. So probably all aspects that we can all apply to, things that are maybe a little bit more boring, like migrating to post-quantum cryptography, but all those probably apply to that as well.
It does.
Yeah. So with your background and your experience in both defense, intelligence community, and cybersecurity, I think you're in a unique, and also cheerleading, of course.
Yeah.
You're probably in a very unique position to speak about the rapid developments that we see in quantum technologies in general, but then also specifically in post-quantum cryptography, right? And I wanted to start with the big picture, and as I said in the introduction, why do you see PQC and the migration as being so different from past tech transitions like Y2K, for instance, and why is it such an ongoing challenge for organizations in your point of view?
It was an interesting time, right? And most of the world found out about Y2K right before we migrated, and it was like a quick update, and then we all woke up on the next, on January 1, and everything was good, right? And then we're like, why did we just spend up all of the world is ending and all of that? And that was Y2K. But this is so much different because of so many different aspects, right? This is not just an upgrade in cryptography. This is going to be like a whole new paradigm shift. And the more that I start working in the space, the bigger it got. Like, oh my goodness, there's so much that needs to be done. And the education and the awareness is not there, right? I had a client that I was meeting with a few months ago, and someone brought up, "Oh, we're PQC compliant." And he stops. He's like, "What's PQC?" And we said, "Post quantum cryptography." He's like, "Oh, I'm not doing quantum. I don't care about that." And my eyes blew up, and I was like, "No, no, no! You are in charge of all this technology and this whole technology organization. You need to care." And I had another meeting on the side later to make sure that he knew why he needed to care. But what is coming with PQC is our language is about to start changing. Our policies, our procedures are about to change. And then we're going to do this technology change. And unlike Y2K, it's not going to be one time fix. We are about to start changing our cryptography to be changed constantly and not to depend on just one algorithm anymore. We're going to have a whole toolbox of different algorithms that will all be updating and all be changing, and we will be switching out for the rest of our technology lives. So that's why this is way different from Y2K. With Y2K, the threat was that some of our software might not run. The threat now is if we do not get prepared, then everything we will call a crown jewel, everything that we think is very important, our communications, our finances, will be exposed and unsecure. Way
Absolutely.
different
Yeah.
from Y2K.
Very much not a one and done event. Very much
Yeah.
a changing the way that we do cryptography and think about that in everyday business, right? So what do you
Yeah.
think for an organization that would treat it like a one and done event? What do you think is maybe the biggest thing that they will overlook and feel confident and move on?
Right. And so if they were sold that this is a one and done thing, then they need to fire their consulting place
Mm.
because it's not. What I hope this gets out to other people. I hope the conversation continues to grow. Um, at This is beyond. We are going to put a lot of effort into the first upgrade, right? And I say the first upgrade because other things will be upgraded, and the algorithms that we have right now to upgrade to, they will be updated, and then there's algorithms that we still need to make sure that everything else is secure, and that is also coming. And so it's not a one and done, and we need to have that conversation, and the conversation actually needs to get up to the C-suite. And so we need to start talking to our leaders and our executives about what this is, not to bore them, but to give them the facts that there is a risk to what is making them successful, and how are we going to protect that those things that I call the crown jewels of your company. That is the difference that needs to happen. And when we start talking to them, what are we going to say? We're going to say there's a risk, but we're also going to say there are solutions out there. So this isn't we're just
We're-
sky's falling.
right. We're not
We
just
actually have solutions to move to, and the solutions can be done by yourself or with help, right? You get to control how you do this. It's just not a huge money grab. You can actually do some of this yourself internally if you choose to.
right. And I think one of the industries, you're talking about how much effort an organization needs to put into that transition. And I think one of the industries that is already a little bit ahead of the curve and has already put a lot of effort into this is certainly the financial industry. I mean, they're so used to being compliance driven. They're so used to a lot of regulations really informing their decisions on purchasing and how they procure new technology that is going to be long lived. So do you think there's a lot of lessons that other industries could learn from the approach that
Yes.
the financial industry took?
Yes, let's applaud the finance industry, right? I'm very happy to say that they are like paving the way for us all, and we're learning. There's a lot of lessons to be learned for whatever that they share. Um, One of the things is, looking across the different finance companies that have started the journey, is that no journey for PQC is the same. And it really shouldn't be, right? We're not all using the same systems. We have some things that are very common, but we're not all. That's what makes each company very unique, is that secret sauce. And so no journey is the same. And so as these consulting teams are going out into these different environments, they do have lessons learned, like, oh, this might be helpful to get through this, but it doesn't mean it's going to work. Another thing that I'm making sure that people are aware of is that when you upgrade algorithms, right, especially when so many applications and systems depend on it and your enterprise depends on it, you need to plan for it to break, right? Because when people were coding, they were coding with specific requirements in mind, and they didn't know that this was going to be the change that we're going to make 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years later. These changes were coming. And so there is a lot of breakage, and you're going to need a team in there that while you're upgrading the algorithm, that when something breaks, that can be able to troubleshoot and to be able to bring your systems back online quickly. You don't want to do a complete rollback unless you have to, but you do need a talented team that can think, right? And one breakage in one company will be completely different from another breakage and another company.
Yeah, and
And I
then
think
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say that ties into what you've been saying earlier, that, we're going to be migrating the first migration to a certain set of algorithms, but then also mentally sort of prepare for those to break, and others
Yes.
are going to come to replace those.
There's another interesting part that I've seen, and finance is definitely has been the trailblazer. Telecoms have come along, healthcare is coming in, and automotive. Some of our manufacturers are also, starting this journey. What is interesting, I found, is that I was, when I was learning about the algorithms and how much bigger that they're going to be,
Some
you
of them,
assume that, yeah, that every system's going to slow down. And I was like, oh, make sure that you're prepared for that. But we also, since no one's journey is the same, in some instances, your systems have actually improved and got faster. And so that is something performance, you want to be able to migrate sooner, for you'll know the performance of your environment. It can be enhanced, but it also can actually be decreased. But more time will be able to fine tune and tweak those
yeah.
those
No, you
scenarios.
raise a very interesting point. In fact, just yesterday we spoke to a large telco provider, and we were talking about exactly that topic, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the very fact that, elliptic curve was nice and small and perfect for
Yes.
resource constrained environments. So, we applied certain paradigms in creating those architectures. Well, now we have, maybe bigger signatures or slower algorithms. So maybe it's a good point in time to revisit,
Hmm.
the given situation of, no, this is how we do authentication. Well, maybe there's a better way, maybe there's a different way. And so that thinking outside of the box, I think, is going to help to deal with that, with uncertainty of, you
Yes.
called it nicely, the design for the breakage, right?
Yes. I think it's important. Just say it, right? And for you won't be surprised. I would say the first migrations, there people were surprised. But when you look back over history and over time, we've migrated many things and we broke many things in the past. And so why would this be any different? But it's also important to have your stakeholders understand that you're going to become more secure, but your performance will adjust. And when that performance adjusts, it's going to be temporary. Like if it degrades, it's temporary. And the reason I say that is that, over time, that algorithm is going to be improved. There are people that's already trying to improve like the speed because the size is so much
So different.
larger.
Yeah.
And so that goes back to the original point. This is not a one time. Things are going to continue to evolve.
Yeah. Well, and thinking about historical, migrations that we've, already done, or we're maybe in the middle of it. I mean, we applauded the financial industry, but there's certain also things that they lag a little bit behind. But let's not talk about those. But if you look at migrations of, like, say, TLS up 1.1 to 1.2,
Yeah.
I think you yourself have a little story in your own experience. How sometimes a migration can even create new vulnerabilities, maybe.
Yeah. So I definitely was just working on just cybersecurity, right? And I was at the time that we were doing the migration and with TLS. And I remember that, you learn how much you didn't know when you look back sometimes.
Right. Hindsight is,
And
yeah.
yes. And I remember I was just working my government job, trying to do a trip report. And you have to log into the browser. And I had to think back, like, what browser we had back then. I was like, was it Netscape? But Netscape just left. So it was like Internet Explorer, Mozilla, Chrome coming on the scene. Those were the three. And none of the browsers worked the same. And then some of the applications only worked with some of the browsers. You couldn't just pick your browser at that time. It was so frustrating. And so the browser that I needed to use to do this trip report on this thing for this app only worked with one browser, and it wouldn't work after the migration. I remember going into the settings and unclicking that box where I
Just
can make it
manually
work.
downgrading.
Right?
Yeah.
I manually did that. And I had no clue that I was, creating a vulnerability at that time, but that's what I did. I had something more secure, but it didn't work. So I manually, as an individual, unclicked it. I don't know when I clicked it back in. I try to remember. I didn't always remember clicking it back in. And I didn't really want to, right? Because stuff was broken. And so there's a lot of lessons from that we can learn, right? And I think we should. This is not our first migration, um, and
At least let's not repeat the same mistakes, right?
yes, yes. And so automation is going to be really important, right? And so automating to be able to get the new algorithms out and onto the right systems in a really well-planned manner is going to be important. But then automation of checking like what our profiles look like, right? We have that technology now, and it's not a heavy lift like it was back then. And because there are going to be other people that is going to be like me, it's like, this doesn't work, or I don't like it. It's not as fast as it used to be. Let me uncheck it. And automation is going to be able to go out there and check and to be able to fix that or disallow someone to be able to do that. You're going to also need a process for feedback.
Right. Yeah. So automate in such a fashion that you give the policy driven control to people that actually know what they're doing, i.e., not the end user, and maybe
Not
also
the
even not,
Yolandas.
maybe no offense, I started my career as a developer, but maybe not even the developer, right? So you give that control in the hands of the cryptography team so that they can implement those policy driven controls to minimize those manual human
Yeah, because we
error.
all have different priorities, right? And so you're going to have that priority of I want this faster, or I didn't need that. My stuff worked just fine without this upgrade, and they're not going to always have that education, understanding, or even care about the new, right? This is to keep us all secure. And usually people don't care until you see a major hack happen to someone so similar to you. When you see something actually, a threat actually become real, then people start to get like, oh,
Yeah.
this is it.
A little bit of human nature plays a role in that as well, right? So
Yeah.
So of course, the whole migration to PQC, a lot of it is technological update. But then, of course, we cannot forget the organizational shift that is going to be required as well in organizations. How they manage cryptography, how they look at risk. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on from your experience what that shift looks like and what leaders in organizations can do to help their teams navigate that shift.
Yeah, so the shift is going to be quite a few shifts, right? First, just even the vocabulary and the language, right? Never have we had this point that we need to talk about this to everybody. Like, this is something that everybody should have an awareness and prepare for. When I started my career, when we heard the term cryptography, I knew I didn't have to pay attention to it. That was the mathematicians. And if we had a question about something, we went to the basement to go get them, right? Now cryptography and encryption is becoming part of our vocabulary of like, is this secure? We're going to need these certain things to be able to do these workflows. And so more people, not just the mathematicians, are going to need to understand the vocabulary in the language. That's going to be a shift, right? And especially the word quantum. If I say quantum, a lot of people shut down and they just say, "Oh, that sounds hard."
Yeah, exactly.
They don't even know.
Yeah.
They don't even listen to the rest. And I'm like, no, I can break it down. No, thank you, Yolanda. You just do that stuff over there. And so the vocabulary is going to have to change. Cryptography, we're going to have to say cryptography, encryption, and quantum, and it not be painful and not be hurtful. Then we're going to need to staff differently, right? And so we talked about breakage. Your network engineers and your desk, they're going to need to understand this is now part of our environment and that changes will be happening, right? And so sometimes, even after we upgrade the first time and things are going to switch, you're going to need to have a staff that understands what algorithms are there and when they're being upgraded and to do the checks. And if something goes wrong, to know what to securely fall back on. That's going to be a new team and a new staff and some education there. Policies and procedures are going to need to change. And then eventually, and I think we're going to talk about it, regulations are going to need to be updated for this because we haven't planned completely for this. Right now, it's a time for awareness and to start the planning. Technically, we probably should have started earlier. I mean, if we look at the last TLS upgrade, how many years did that take? It was like 2008 was the publication, and then we were through in 2020. And the only reason we were really through in 2020 was because Google and Microsoft said they're not supporting anymore.
Right.
And it forced at the very end. Yes, it forced us to do that. So a lot of those things are going to need to change. And it's going to be interesting, but more secure. And I think the bonus of PQC is that when you talk about cybersecurity, which I, of course, care about and I love, there is a lot of things we accepted as risks because cybersecurity was too expensive, too hard, and all of these things. And we have lots of vulnerabilities that we accepted in our systems over the years. Or a legacy system can't be updated because it is just, we depend on it and it can't take an update. And so we accept that risk. But PQC, it makes us address all of it. And so at the end of your journey, you're going to have a more secure platform than you ever had.
Before.
And we're going to be fixing a lot of things that we accepted as risk before. We're going to be fixing those things. And if we choose not to, right? If you choose to continue to ignore, you won't have security.
You're gonna end up with obsolete systems, if anything, right? Because I mean, you bring up the topic of timelines and regulations, and I know you and I are keeping a close eye on that because we're, somewhat part
Yeah.
of that bubble. But if you look at the timelines that, are being communicated globally, they all seem to somewhat fall into place around, 2030 for everything that's really critical, and then
Yeah.
2035 for, everything else that's less critical, but also needs that upgrade.
Yeah.
And I think that, sort of gives a nice time frame of, this is the ideal time in which those changes should happen. And hey, by the way, we're deprecating RSA and ECC by 2030 and disallowing it by 2035.
Yeah.
So, you know,
And this is the thing, though, when those numbers come out, people still think they have time. And that's where I get a little like, "Ugh, I don't want to tell you 2030, right? Because people
right.
are like, I have 5 more years. And I was
Mhm.
like, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
all the things that we need to be able to do by 2030, we should have already started like a decade before. And I'm putting together because I have a few talks on this, and I wanted people to understand how we are late. We are behind. And so, when we look at, let's just go back to Y2K, which we already said was a simple, it was a simple
Right.
upgrade.
Right.
You know, they identify Y2K as a potential problem in the late 1980s. And so, and then we were doing a math rush right at 2000. That's over 15 years
Right. Right.
to actually go from start to the end. 5 years is nothing, right? When you start looking at these other migrations taking 15 to 20 years. And so we're behind. If we're having this awareness conversation today, then we're behind because that awareness should have already happened. Our plans should be already done, and we should be in the implementing and testing phase right now.
Yeah, and it's interesting for you to tie it back into the Y2K discussion from the beginning, right? Because we
Yeah.
focused on what is different between the two, right? Where one is
Yes.
a one and done migration and the other one is a fundamental change in how we do things. But the similarity that you just pointed out really is Y2K became more or less a non-event because
Yeah.
we were prepared, right? And because that
Correct.
conversation started, like you said, 15, 20 years prior when someone said, oh, wait a minute, this thing is coming, right?
Yeah.
And then, yes, of course, even in that, I remembered, 1999 working as a developer. I
Yeah.
remember that mad rush of like,
It was.
sit there. All the pizza places were sold out for like, weeks.
Exactly, because you were staying up late and it was so much and it was a lot going on. And it was so much stress. And it was like you were working weekends and but we were prepared,
Right, right,
right? We took it to all the way to the end, but we were still prepared. This time, people are putting out like 2030, 2035. And I don't like to put that date out because this is what I saw with, Quantum World Day was what, last month, I think. And I got a lot of invitations to be able to attend these things outside the country. And I'm like, dang it, I wish you told me sooner to have planned. But there's a huge investment in the quantum. Huge. It's not all in America, it is everywhere across this globe. Huge investments. And then with those investments, any investor wants to see their money back and they want to make money off of this. And so we learned from ChatGPT, right? We knew Gen AI was coming. We knew that it was coming. We just didn't know when. We thought it was going to be a few years later. I really believed that Google was going to be the first one, but it doesn't matter. You know, we thought it was coming later. Okay. There was papers published a month before ChatGPT was released of how it was coming in a couple of years. This is going to be the future. I would not be surprised if that happens with quantum because there's so many investors investing in quantum. Whoever comes first knows they probably are going to be the winner. And so there's a lot of things out there saying that we might have quantum advantage 2027, 2028. and I've seen some for 2029. So say in 2030, if these actually come within that 27, 29, they we're already screwed.
Right.
So
Yeah, and
this is the time.
and that's the full pivot point also, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no going back at that point. And depending who gets to it first, they might not tell everyone. It might not be a press announcement like in the case of ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so it might hit us from a blindside more or less. So, but you bring up AI, and of course, there's a lot of buzz around that for sure.
Yeah.
But then you take quantum and AI, and of course they intersect, right? And if you look
Yeah.
at that intersection and how that is gonna or already has an effect on cybersecurity, and I'd be curious to hear your take on what do you see as the general society and technology regulators being prepared for policy shifts and to handle that convergence.
Yeah. So I was having some talks with trying to put a position paper together for people in the Hill. And and I'm talking about PQC. I'm like, we need to make sure we're having this conversation. And I was told, Yolanda, people are still trying to grapple AI, right? Our regulators, they're trying to just get a handle on this. And I'm I had to say, I'm like, I understand that. You're trying to focus on AI and figure out what you're going to do, what parameters and things like that, but it's already out the bag. And in a traditional world, right, we have one technology release and then we get used to it and then we get another. This ain't that world. We have AI and then we're going to have quantum and then we're going to have quantum plus AI. And then we don't even know what the next thing is, but there's rumors of what is after quantum. And so technology is so much faster and it's disrupting a lot of things. So our regulators are not there. They're not there yet. And we need to help as a community to get them there, even though we haven't put a bow on AI yet. And we still need to care and we still need to get out there and we still need to have something in place because technology without boundaries is scary.
Yeah.
Now, the opportunity of quantum plus AI is going to be incredible, right? In the really good hands, there's going to be a lot of things that classical computers get stuck in that this quantum plus AI is going to help so much. So insider threats and cybersecurity and finding adversarial activity is so much potential. And then for healthcare, and then and right, and finance is going to be incredible. Has the potential to be even more secure from people stealing money. Only if we get a handle on it, if we get the boundaries and the regulations there.
So you think that for AI and quantum policies, guardrails, clear defined boundaries are going to be important.
It's going to be important. It's going to be helpful. And then I also challenge everybody that listens to this is that we shouldn't wait till quantum machines are here to start thinking of use cases of how to use it. And I say that for two reasons, right? If you go do a Google search on like adversarial use of quantum, there's a lot of people that already did that search. And so people are looking to use quantum for bad purposes. And so if you're on the good side, you need to start looking at use cases of how you're going to use quantum for good purposes.
Right. So given, we talked a little bit about, the financial industry, but given you're quite involved with government and federal agencies as well, what is what additional challenges do you see them facing in the preparation for post-quantum and, getting that migration started and implementing PQC within their environments?
Yeah. So government, has always been aware of quantum, right? And for decades. They can say that. I think one of the biggest challenges for government at this moment is getting their mindset to stop looking at quantum as a research project anymore, right? To start looking at this as it's here.
Not cool.
And I don't want to say it's coming because the machines are built. We're just optimizing them. Quantum's here. And I think that is a mental block that government personnel needs to get over and starts like, now that it's here, what are we doing? Um, of course, we also need to look at, the money, right? Like this in the planning and the budgets, those need to come as well. And then traditional acquisition, we all know for government is very long. And so, what are the creative ways of using some of our newer contracting vehicles and acquisition strategies to be able to bring this on faster because this is an emerging threat? Right. And so, if we were to find money because something happened to us on the battlefield, we can find money for this threat that is actually happening. And this isn't a threat that's coming. Right. Um, the term, harvest now, decrypt later, that has been going on for several years. And if you're not aware of it, it's, adversaries are stealing our data, knowing they can't decrypt it now. But when a quantum machine comes, everything they stole, they'll be able to break open relatively quickly. Some say months, some say days.
Probably
whatever.
The main reason why we started with upgrading TLS 1.3 is to protect against the harvest now, decrypt later threat, right?
Exactly. Upgrade as much as you can. So, what hasn't been stolen yet, please secure right now. And so the threat has already been active. And it just took a while to be able to recognize like all that data that was leaving your company or your agency that was exfilled. That was the strategy. And we can't rely that, it wasn't, if what they stole was encrypted because they're going to decrypt it when the machines come. So we already have the threat.
Right.
It's already happening.
Yeah. That was probably also, reading through guidelines, put out by FSISec and the like, again, financial industry driven. I think that was a real wake-up call for them as well, because financial institutions have a lot of long-lived data. So as soon as they saw that, like you said, that threat is already here today, this is not a thing of the future. They were like, okay, we better roll up our sleeves and get started with this. Right?
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of cybersecurity professionals and people who ran teams and things like that. And that was a big wake-up call for them as well, is like, we've been watching exfil happening at incredible amounts of data for a very long time. And so just not recognizing this was an active campaign of steal your stuff. And who's stealing? I haven't read if there's really attribution out there of who is out there, but we can all assume certain places.
Right.
But it's still happening.
Yeah.
As we speak, things are stolen. Identity technology is going to be very important when quantum comes, just because of all the things that have been stolen. People are going to be able to impersonate a lot of different things. So we're entering a very interesting time, and that's why we can't wait.
And of course, some of those early migrations, like the ones for TLS 1.3, organizations chose to use hybrid solutions where I guess classical and quantum resistant algorithms work side by side. What do you see as sort of the main challenges in that hybrid approach?
The main challenge that I see in there is, as a community, we have not said that we agree hybrid approach is correct, right? And so I've talked to a couple of expert cryptographers, and they were pro hybrid. But then you have agencies that say, no, do not go hybrid. And if you're in, if you're in between, you see both, what do you do? What strategy? And it's really a philosophy decision. And so since we're making philosophy decisions and we're picking one and the other, not knowing and not coming together as a community, I think that's the hardest challenge, is what do I pick? Why do I pick it? And then living with the consequences of what you picked.
Right. And I think that's, there's a lot to be said about, organizations that are just now starting to explore quantum readiness of their own organization, and a decision, about using hybrid or not using hybrid certainly becomes part of sort of that, starting on that journey. So besides that, do you have some recommendations on, what are the best first practical steps that they could take to get started on this?
Yeah, I do. And it starts off pretty basic, really, is that you cannot solve the problem without understanding your problem. Every journey is going to be different. So your organization is going to be different from everyone else. And within your organization, what do you have? What do you value? What's your secret sauce that you don't want to be stolen? And you need to come up with that inventory and that strategy and that planning. And it takes a lot of time. Like you can do it, you can do things on your own, you can get consultants. I recommend a combination of both, right? And I recommend that because if you do some of that and you bring in a consultant, then you understand your environment even more. So you start off with what do you know? The consultant helps you to identify what you didn't realize, and then you can have more ownership over your environment. So that's my personal recommendation, because this is a journey for you. This is the beginning of a journey, and you're going to need to know that your crypto inventory, as the term says, you're going to need to know your crypto inventory for the rest of your existence while we have technology. So that's what I would start with, is start planning, start budgeting, start talking about it. Other people need to be aware that there is a change, and it will not necessarily be smooth, but is necessary. And there's a reward at the end of maintaining the security that you got used to, and that your security posture might even improved. And then just start a schedule. Like if you don't have all the facts yet, put together a schedule. We just told you 2027, 2030, it might be here. And so back up and then try to figure out how to actually meet your schedule. That's what I would tell organizations right now, is just start the planning.
Yeah, I think those are really valuable recommendations, and I find it interesting that you talk a lot about journeys, right? So of course you also have your personal journey as a cancer survivor, and I'd be curious how that made you more resilient to go through that journey, and how you apply that to some of the projects that you manage for your clients.
Yeah, it's very similar, right? In some ways, to survive cancer, I was given 1 year to live in 2013, and and so how do you process 1 year, and then what do you put in place? And so I had to start planning. What's important, right? Identify my crown jewels. And that's what you're going to have to do here, is what is the most important thing and how do you protect that? And so what my important thing was my daughter, of course, and how do I protect her? What are all the strategies I need to put in place to protect her? And then as I start to survive, right, as my chances continue to increase, what were the things that I value, and putting my energy into that. And so that's why I do things like this, is that I love tech. I look at emerging tech as an opportunity, but there's also a threat. And so I put my energy into, how do I plan and how do I help in that? So there's some parallels, you take that same strength and you apply it everywhere. And, I value life, and I value improving life, and I enjoy it.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing your insights, Yolanda, professional as well as personal. Really appreciate it. So for our listeners, where can they follow your work and, get even more updates on your thoughts around PQC, AI? cybersecurity, cheerleading, and all the other things.
And so you can definitely check me out on my LinkedIn, right? And then, you can send messages. I have, wherever I am working and whatever I'm doing, I do try to advocate for that and I post it there. And then I love talking to anyone. I've been brought into conferences. I've been brought into private meetings just to be able to talk through things. There's so many vendors, so many consultants out there that try to sell off of your fear and your misunderstanding. And so if I can be a help to you, then I want to be. There's a lot of goodness out there, and I want people to get to that good spot.
Fantastic. It's been great having a conversation with you, Yolanda. Thanks very much again for coming on. And
Thank you.
The quantum era is already here. With the right tools, the right knowledge, and the right mindset, together we can face it head on. To find out more about PQ Shield and how our cutting-edge solutions can help you secure your data against the quantum threat, visit pqshield.com. Make sure to search for Shielded, the last line of cyber defense, in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Don't forget to click subscribe so you never miss an episode. On behalf of the team here at PQ Shield, thanks for listening.